All right, we are live. I think everything is working. We have movement in the courtroom. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but welcome all, welcome. Let's see here. Let me get the tweet out. Okay. Hello, everybody. I don't know if we have a verdict yet. There's definitely something going on here. But welcome. They have sheriff here. They have a verdict. That's why they have sheriff here. All right, so still no word on anything, but with sheriff in the courtroom, the prosecutor there, the family's coming in. I don't know if I'm delayed. Something's off with this stream, but that's okay. We're live. We're covering it live. What do we have? We have no audio yet. Turn on the audio, man. I feel like I'm talking to myself here. All right. Do we have a hung jury? I can't imagine, because of the level of sheriff deputies in the courtroom, I have to imagine that this is a verdict. I have to imagine it is a verdict. Let me see what we have on my insider information from Facebook. I feel like there's a huge delay. Is there a verdict? I got somebody who has boots on the ground. Hey, Aaron. Nothing ever happens. All right, so we have sheriff in the courtroom.
Thing with our technology here, but just for those who are joining us right now, that we have seen people get into the courtroom. We did see Christopher Schurr and his team walk in, and at one point walk into another room. We are looking at a monitor right now that shows that.
Okay, we don't need to listen to this woman. But yeah, it sounds like there's a verdict. Let me see. How can I fix this? Why is this being so weird? Hang on. Let me try to find another stream, see if we have something else, because I don't want to listen to these talking heads. But it looks like we have a verdict. Oh, no, that's the Pope. Do we have a verdict there yet? Yeah, I think they really have I think they have a verdict. They have something. Something's happening. This case is going to get resolved one way or another in just the next few minutes. So tell your friends to get in here.
Workers there working behind the desk. As you can kind of see, this kind of caught us off guard a little bit because we were not exactly sure if we were going to get a heads up whether there was going to be some activity with the jury.
So the audio is working. That's good.
Well, Judge
Oh,
Mims
this
has
woman,
not gone
giant
into the
blueberry.
courtroom just yet, but obviously the moment that she goes in, we believe that court proceedings, possible verdict, not verdict, will be read when she's able to come in and bring the jury in as well. So again, this is
Well,
all
the only
developing
reason
right
why I
now.
think that there's a verdict is because there's a lot of sheriff deputies in that room. And hang on. There's a lot of sheriff deputies in that room, which leads me to believe that there's a verdict. Now, the note would come to the judge saying that there's a verdict and not knowing necessarily if it, on what charge or if it's an acquittal. And that might be why the deputies are there. The deputies could also be there, I suppose, for courtroom security, given that there might be a hung jury and the case is getting dismissed. So I don't know. I'm basing it off of the fact that there was like 5 sheriff deputies there. Let's see. Becker was pacing again. I see. Yeah, let's see. I don't care what this is. Yes, we all know what the charges are. He looks nervous. None of these attorneys are good, by the way. None of these attorneys are good. I have to say that. I didn't like the presentation from any side. I thought all their cross-examinations were weak. I thought their presentation of the case was weak. I thought the opening statements were very bad. The defense's closing argument was the best out of anything, but it still wasn't that good because it kind of droned on. Although it did have a narrative, and he did walk through the witnesses, and he explained what they said and why they said it, but it was boring. This is a song and dance show in front of the jury, and it was extremely boring. The best thing that the defense did was put the right witnesses on, I think, because I was guilty. I was on the guilty side until the defense witnesses. By the way, if you're in my chat, there is a poll going on whether or not it's second-degree manslaughter, not guilty, or hung jury.
Is acquitted. Also, we can still have that hung jury.
Yeah, another thing that we don't know at this point is we could either have those 4 outcomes.
No, they've been protesting the entire time.
And then
the judge. Did they protest? Oh, yeah, there were protests when the shooting happened. Absolutely. And then they came back out for the trial. But throughout the trial, they've been protesting. I thought it was funny. I clipped another portion of it where the reporter was on the street saying that the pro Christopher Schurr protesters got there early in the morning, and the pro Patrick Lyoya protesters got there around 10 o'clock-ish when things started happening. These are the reporters that were there talking about this morning.
About the activity
inside. I just thought that was really funny the way she just casually mentions that.
Other than the supporters here out, usually it's a lot more active scene out here in front of the Kenton County Courthouse. And behind us earlier within the hour, we had over a dozen supporters for Christopher Schurr. They've since packed up. We're not sure exactly where they went, if they went inside the courthouse or they're maybe done for this morning. But we had over a dozen of Christopher Schurr supporters. Right. About a handful of supporters of Patrick Lyoya still here, letting their voices be heard.
It's early. It's before 10 a.m. There's not a lot of Patrick Lyoya protesters.
A different scene, very active yesterday compared to today.
Right, and it's just a little bit past 9:40 in the morning now, so it's really surprising that Schurr supporters did pack up their flags, they packed up their signs, and they did leave. Another thing that we're shocked about is the fact that Christopher Schurr did not use the main entrance.
Right.
He has been every single day, maybe not yesterday because we didn't see him. He could have possibly been in there. We just didn't know.
All right. So to answer the question here, why does the state get to stack manslaughter charges on top of the murder charges in this case? Wouldn't one preclude the other? No. So manslaughter is a lesser included to second-degree murder. So for each level of unauthorized killing, there's an added element. Like first-degree murder is you intend to do the act, and it causes the death, right? It's that intent that's first degree. The second degree is like the malice with great disregard. And then manslaughter is essentially negligence, gross negligence. So they're all just a little bit less, and each step down offers a little bit one less element. So, but otherwise they're the same. So they're allowed to amend it after the trial starts. Now they couldn't add things like assault with a deadly weapon or something like that. Like they couldn't add a completely different charge after the case started, but a lesser included, because the other elements are the same, they're able to amend after the fact. In Michigan, they're actually able to amend with leave from the court, even additional charges. Like if during testimony it came out like, oh, this guy's actually committed a different offense, they could actually amend it with leave from the court, but they didn't need it for a lesser included. So they added it on, they reserved it, and then when they felt like their case was weak, they added it on as a compromise verdict for the jury, which I think is shady, and I don't think should be allowed, but that's why it's allowed, because it's essentially it's one tier less than the second degree, which is why they do it. Dave, idea a Ford emoji. Yeah. Motor City Capital, right there. The city that Ford built. Actually, that's Dearborn, and it's like the little Middle East.
Just a little quieter this morning. Of course, we're all on verdict watch to see what will happen.
I was on verdict watch. I was sitting working.
Where we are in the case.
For the last 3 days, I've been sitting working and staring at the Great Seal of the state of Michigan, waiting for something to happen.
See, what the jury will come up with, or whatever decision or whatever live updates that's going to happen inside the courtroom.
Well, then,
of course, we've heard from Callie,
you're no good to me. I was asking my insider source if there was a verdict, and they have no info.
What we have and what we're seeing here on the ground. But outside the Kent County Courthouse right now, very quiet here on this side.
All right. What's this case for? This is Christopher Schurr, the Grand Rapids police officer who's been charged with second-degree murder with an added count of manslaughter for the unaliving of Patrick Lyoya, a suspect who ran and fought and stole the officer's taser, and it appears might have been trying to use it on him at the time he was shot and killed by Christopher Schurr. And we have maybe a verdict. Yeah, my inside sources are apparently not reliable, though.
What we're seeing right now, obviously, we can see half of the room filled with Schurr supporters. Or we are assuming that Lyoya
the defendant is there.
On the other side. Schurr, for a moment, you see that door right there. Schurr and his team had stepped behind that door.
Yeah, that's why I think there's a verdict, because there's so many sheriff deputies there.
Obviously, can see Kent County Sheriff's deputies all around in this courtroom. We saw police out in front. We see Kent County deputies here as well. We also have security.
Yeah, I was more towards that. I feel like he's guilty. Like that video looked really bad. I feel like he's guilty. That's where I was. I'm like, I want to see the evidence. And as the prosecutor was presenting its first few witnesses before they got to their experts, I was like, oh yeah, he's guilty. And then they got to their experts, and that kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. But then the defense and their experts and the captains that testified convinced me that no, I don't think it's beyond a reasonable doubt that it wasn't self-defense. And so that's why I'm at the not guilty part.
8 days. But again, to your point, it really could mean that the jury's
we're
deadlocked. We don't know what.
So I have an update on Ethan Crumbley. His Court of Appeals opinion came out. I'm going to do a stream about that probably next week. And then it's probably going to be a while before we have more Crumbley updates, just because everything's got to work its way through the Court of Appeals.
Remember, the jury came back deadlocked, I believe it was on Tuesday, and the judge did ask them to go back in deliberations. That's also a opportunity that could happen here. The judge could continue to say, you have not deliberated long enough. You need to continue deliberations. So a lot of things could happen at this point. Again, we're just waiting.
Well,
kind of see what's happening.
The three that were acquitted
have to take in consider,
down in Tennessee, was it Tennessee or Georgia? I can't remember. Whatever. They weren't the ones that like really did anything. I mean, yeah, they were kind of fighting, but they're not the one that kicked the guy in the head, right? So he didn't really cause, those other three didn't really cause the death. They were just kind of there, right? So it's a little different than this case.
Did approve this jury. So both sides going into this trial felt confident that this makeup of this jury would help them talk.
Yeah, look at this. I know Bronco's been talking about it. We talked about it a little bit on his stream yesterday. This jury panel, I don't know how this got past the defense. This is not just looking at it on paper, right? Black and white. I wasn't there. I wasn't questioning them. I didn't see their responses. I didn't hear their, you know, their demeanor. But just looking at this black and white, this is not a good jury for Christopher Schurr.
Yeah, and if they need to, they'll swap. Again,
I thought it
seat
was
1 and
Memphis.
2, we don't know the jury makeup. Again, that's been intentionally done, so nobody knows the identity of who those jurors are. Again, as
I thought
we
it was
wait
one
for
that
this
pled
jury,
guilty.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens here. There are 4 main outcomes that we could see.
All right, if you guys
Again,
haven't
he
voted,
could
jump over to
be
my stream
convicted
if you
of
can,
second-degree
and
murder here.
go
He
ahead
could
and
also
vote
be
in
convicted
the
of,
poll
voluntary
before we get the
manslaughter.
verdict.
There could also be a hung
The
jury,
options
and
are
there could
second-degree
also,
manslaughter, not guilty, and
be
hung jury.
They could also be sent back into deliberations. I understand that
Let
we
me,
have Callie Lichter live in the courthouse right now following
let me
this
pull up
breaking news for us.
Nick's.
Callie, I know we were texting back and forth a few minutes
Nick
ago.
have a
Any
poll going?
indication on what is going on?
No, Nick doesn't have a poll going.
Tanner, we really do not know what is going
I'm
on.
gonna post
in
the
that
Nick's
courtroom
chat
right
till you
now. I
guys
know
get
we're
over
standing
here.
outside of the media room, so I can't see the feed right now of what's going on inside the courtroom. But you know, there's definitely a different energy up there today. I know our Riley Mack, who's currently in the courtroom, said, you know, today just feels different. And when she told us, she
All right,
sent
I'm
us
gonna
a text
put
and said, guys,
Nick's.
we're going into the courtroom. And again, we don't know what that means. We've already seen people called back for when the
Nick's
jury
stream
told
link is
Christina
gonna get
Mims,
pinned at the
you know,
top
they
of
were
my
deadlocked.
chat.
So like you guys have been saying, you know, for the past couple of minutes, this
All
could
right.
mean a deadlocked jury, or this could mean a verdict. This could mean they, you know, they came to a conclusion about, you know,
It's
what
interesting
type of
that we
verdict,
don't
you
have
know,
any
they
word
want
on whether or
to
not this is a
they
verdict
agree
yet,
on. And
or
then, you know, what I was seeing from that court feed, you saw the defense team along with Christopher Schurr, you know, kind of go into a separate room for a few minutes. Again, we do not know what they were talking about back there. It's really all just up
okay,
in the air,
sir.
waiting
Watch
to see,
Andor.
you know,
It's not a
what's
movie;
going
it's a
to
TV
happen.
show. But
And
watch
I would
Andor,
assume, you know,
and
the
then come back and tell
coming
me.
minutes
Andor
when
is
the judge comes
excellent.
back and the jury
And
comes
season
back
2, I
in.
think, just dropped.
And I mean, you know, it's been
So
4 days of
I'm gonna be watching
deliberation,
that. That's
and
my
the
weekend
jury does not
activities.
have a set time on how long they can deliberate
So they
on. You know, it's
started
kind of up to
deliberation
them.
around 1
It's
o'clock
almost like, you
on
know, go at your own pace. It's really until they can
Tuesday.
come to a conclusion
So they had
that
half
they
a
can
day,
really
say, on
deliberate on
Tuesday,
this
then
case.
all day
And
Wednesday,
so maybe
and
they said
then
4 days is enough time to
what
come
is
to a
today?
verdict, or
Thursday?
again, maybe we could see another deadlocked jury.
No,
And
half a
obviously,
day on
Brian, you are
Monday.
not in
Then
the
they had
courtroom
all
right
day
now. You're on a
Tuesday.
separate level from the courtroom, but I have to ask.
All day
The,
Tuesday, where they came
is
back
there
with the
any
deadlock
tension in the courthouse
issue, and the
at this
judge gave
point?
them
You know, me and
instructions
Taylor
and
were
sent them
talking
back for another 3
casually
hours.
before we were alerted
And
to
then they
people
had
in the
all day
courtroom. How
Thursday.
is the vibe with
I'm sorry, all day
inside the
Wednesday.
actual
Jeez, I'm
courthouse
getting
right
my days
now?
messed up. That'd be 8, 16,
Yeah, so you know, being on the 5th
like
floor with
20
the courtroom
hours
being on the 10th
ish.
floor, we aren't seeing a
2
lot of
full
people
days,
who are
20
here
plus
for, you know,
another
the
hour.
trial for the
So
case.
22
Really, the
hours,
people
we'll
that
say. 22 hours
the
of
media here on
deliberation.
the 5th floor have been seeing for the
I'm
past
good at
couple
math.
days have just been the media, unless, you know, they've gone upstairs to the 10th floor.
Pepper can't
But
sit
from
still.
the
Yeah.
messages, you know, we're getting from Riley Mack, who's been on the 10th floor for the past couple of days, going to that courtroom.
He looks uneasy,
She said,
doesn't
you
he?
know, everyone is just
I think he
waiting.
knows
She said
his
there's been more people
political
here than
career
she's
might be
seen,
over,
in
regardless
previous
of the
days,
outcome.
you know, waiting to get into that courtroom, anticipating a verdict. And so, you know, from what she is saying up there, you know, it's just a different type
59%
of
with the hung
energy
jury.
today that we've seen. And you know, as you come inside the
59% with the hung
courthouse, you have
jury
to
in
go
my
through
poll so far.
security, put your things through security. And I know
21%
that,
not
you know, talking
guilty,
to people down
14%
there,
manslaughter.
there's also been
Only
some people, everyone
7%
is
say
just
guilty of
awaiting
second
this
degree.
verdict, hoping that it's going to come on the 4th day today.
It does seem like there is a different energy, Callie, to your point. And of course, there are those 4 main things.
You
that
need
we
my
see
code
in
for
the
Disney.
outcome Of this. Again, that
I
second-degree
canceled
murder,
it forever.
voluntary manslaughter, acquittal, or a hung jury here. In
When
which case there would be
the
a mistrial.
first Andor season, that was like 2 years ago, ended, and then I saw what was coming up, I just canceled it.
Last 4 days as the jury
But then they came out with that kids Star Wars show, which I thought might be entertaining. I saw some reviews, so I got it again, and that was kind of entertaining. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, that it has.
And
I
it
know
reminded
no
me
one
of
was
old
quite
school Disney,
anticipating
so that
from,
was
you know,
fun.
people who
And
have been
then,
telling us what they kind of expect.
I haven't really
how long
watched anything
this
since.
is going to take. I know we were originally told 3 weeks. You know, I believe the first week was jury selection, last week and this week.
22 hours, I'd say
but, you know,
guilty.
we're told that was kind of like a longer estimate. But so, you know, we were knowing probably on the first day of deliberation we were not going to get a verdict. Maybe not on the second day either. But as the days kind of tick on, you know, a lot of people are saying, there's a lot to get through. So, you know, it's definitely over the past couple
Yeah,
of days.
that bartender, if you read the prosecutor's report, I put it in my Discord, by the way. If anyone's a member of this channel and you have access to the Discord, just go to the member tab and there should be a link. The prosecutor's report on that bartender or that bar bouncer
word that one the clerks for the courtroom
self-defense is interesting because it came out in October of 2022. Just a few months after this.
And we're going back on the record in 2210260 FC, People versus Schurr. All parties are present. And I did receive communication from the jury that they're unable to reach a decision. I am going to have them come in to the courtroom to verify that, and we'll proceed from there. Anything you want to address on the record before that happens, Mr. Becker?
Nothing for Your Honor.
Mr. Borgula?
I asked briefly, Your Honor, just following up on some communications we had with the court regarding, I understand the court's going to declare this trial. I asked the court if it would consider Michigan Court Rule 6.420 that relates to if the defendant is charged with 2 or more counts. The court may inquire the jury as whether they reach.
Yes, needs to do this.
And it's my understanding that the court is not going to do that for the reasons discussed, which were that, first of all, it's discretionary. Second of all, it's the court's position this isn't actually 2 separate counts. It's just 1 count with a lesser included.
Right. Mr. Becker?
Yeah, I've taken verdicts like that where there's 2 separate counts, but this is 1 count with a lesser included. So it's different, so I don't think
right.
Do that.
Of course,
Yeah,
you would
so
argue
that rule does not apply in this situation because there's only 1 count on the information. So.
All right. So what he asked for, the defense asked for, poll the jury to see if they were unanimous in a not guilty for second-degree murder. Then prejudice attaches and they can't charge him again for that. They can only charge him for the manslaughter. The judge, of course, said no.
Okay. And so did receive communication that you were unable to reach a verdict. Who was the 4th person to raise your hand? Okay. And so first I wanted to verify that that's true, that you're unable to reach a verdict as a panel.
Correct.
Okay. And so what I'm going to do is declare a mistrial in this case, and that means that you're all discharged. And so I'm going to send you back to the jury room just to await further instructions regarding transportation and that sort of thing. Also, I will come back and speak with you.
So we have another trial coming up.
I can answer, and then potentially the attorneys
maybe
want to speak with you as well.
Now, the prosecutor has to reissue charges. The question is are they going to?
In a few minutes. So we'll have you leave out of the same door. Thank you, and thank you for your time.
Address bond, maintain personal. Hey, Nick. Mistrial. Whoop. What happened? There you are. Are you still at work, Nick?
Hello.
Hello.
Not sure there's anything.
So a mistrial is the best thing that could happen for the defense right now at this point. The defense did not do a good job. I mean, a mistrial is not bad, but it starts the clock over again, right? It's not a loss. So so that's where we're at.
Okay. So I
need to address it.
I'm still at work.
I figured as much. But hey, so the defense did ask to poll the jury on a unanimous consensus regarding second degree, because their argument is that if there was unanimous not guilty on second degree, then prejudice would attach, and the judge, of course, denied that. She cited that she said the court rule doesn't apply because the manslaughter is a lesser included. If it was a different charge, if it was like assault or something like that, then it would apply. That was the judge's ruling. Now, I don't know enough about that. I haven't had to encounter that in my practice, so I will defer to the judge at this point. But that does ring a bell. There's a case that I had years ago that somewhat touched on that, so I think the judge made an accurate ruling, but I don't know. We'll see. Well, let's hear what happens. Let's see what's going to happen with bond and all that good stuff.
Great.
All
Right. Should work a little.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
That's it.
Court is adjourned.
All right, please.
But did they pull the jury at all, or do we only know it was a hung jury?
Well, all we know is it's a hung jury. The judge asked the foreman to identify him or herself. I think it was a woman. And she declared that they were at an impasse. They were deadlocked. And the judge then declared a mistrial. And that's it. So only the foreman spoke.
Okay.
Yep. So.
Yeah. Hopefully, we will hear from one of the jurors.
Yeah, I hope so.
Eventually.
Yeah, I would really like to hear from one of the jurors. If for any reason, are we going to do a press conference? If we have a press conference, I'll pull that up too. But
To an agreement on.
So yeah, hopefully we can hear from one of the jurors and get an idea of what exactly was going on. This defense was just so bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, the prosecution lost this case.
They really did. They did. And I said if the defense won, it would have been in spite of themselves. Because they were just really, the only thing that they knew how to do well was call the right expert witnesses. Wait, is that the jury? No. That's not the jury. So they're showing the jury, which is funny, is after the Crumley case, it was the first time they were actually able to show the jury. So the camera was out there filming the jury. So I thought maybe that was the same thing.
Reach a decision, and of course,
I wonder if they're going to do I was just seeing if they're going to do a press conference. Take care, Aaron. Thanks for joining us.
Take care. Thanks for being here.
After all of that, I wonder if we're going to get another. Wonder if they're going to charge him again. I imagine. I don't know. If I'm this prosecutor, right? He can walk away from this, right? He can walk away from this and save face. He's like, hey, I gave it all I got. And so for the people that wanted to see this officer charged, I gave it all I got. It came back with a mistrial. I don't feel like I have a good enough case to overcome this mistrial issue. And so I'm not going to rebring charges. And then he can also save face with the officers and be like, hey, listen, I needed to bring this. We did it. Resulted in a mistrial. I'm going to drop the charges. He can then make friends with both sides and maybe save his political career, right?
Yeah. If he gets reelected, I'm going to send what he said about dead firemen. I'm going to send that to the fire department and say, why did you support this guy again? If they do.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see if he's going to reissue charges. Hey, Mama 3, thank you very much for the super chat. Good morning to you too.
Good morning.
All right.
Good morning.
So the poll was right. My poll was 58% hung jury, and you guys got it right. So good on you all for getting that. Oh, hang on. Let's see what she has to say.
We've been anticipating over the past couple of days, Lauren. I don't know if really any of us were expecting at, around 9:30, 10 in the morning, whatever, time we're currently at, that we were going to,
I had
get
just
this, mistrial ruling from the judge. And, we kind of anticipated, they were.
So I fired up the
deadlocked
computers here this morning in the treehouse. I was going to work from home today. And I was just sort of settling in. I was kind of watching the live stream, and then I was flipping over to some of my favorite YouTubers covering the Karen Reed case and chatting away. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I should probably have the live stream up and running just in case. And I pulled it back up, and all of a sudden I saw that they were like panning out to the courtroom, and there was the prosecutor. I'm like, oh, no, I got to run up here and get going. It just so happened. Karen Reed was distracting me.
There was no really fanfare.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
no wonder, because Lieutenant Bukaki is on the stand, and oh boy.
I was getting all kinds of messages about that. And so I was jumping around between a bunch of chats and commenting and listening in a bit. And then I was like, I should probably have it up, and just in case, I had it up here in the treehouse, but I wasn't sitting in the treehouse. So I was like, I should also have it up somewhere else. Okay, well,
what was the main thing you think that made the prosecution? I mean, if you have to pinpoint one thing that the prosecution lost this case on.
That's a good question, because I came in thinking guilt, right? And I came in thinking guilt. And then when the prosecution played the first few videos and called the first few witnesses, these are the witnesses that actually were there, first-hand witnesses, I was still on the guilty side. And then they started pulling in the out-of-state experts that were talking about these grandiose ideas. And that put a bad taste in my mouth. But I was still kind of on the like, I'm not seeing enough to say to show me that this is self-defense. So, but then during the defense's case in chief, when they called the first couple of experts and they were talking about the video was the big thing. And when for the first time, you see that Lyoya is actually switching the taser into his right hand. He's still manipulating and controlling the taser. He didn't just grab it to prevent himself from being tased and then let go of it. He's still manipulating it and switching hands. That's what clinched it for me that, there might actually be, the whole right side of both Lyoya and Schurr's bodies were obscured by their bodies. So you couldn't see it in the video. And so now that was the first time I'm like, this might actually be self-defense. And each one of those defense witnesses, the cross was extremely weak. And I think that's where the state lost this case, was in not properly cross-examining the defense witnesses. At least that's my perspective, because that's where I went. I went from he's guilty because I've seen the video to, okay, I'm still sure he's guilty when the trial was starting. And I don't like these experts from the state, but he's still guilty. And then they failed at the cross. So I think that's where the state lost.
Yeah. And I mean, I could see it go either way. But mostly I thought, because this was an emotion versus law trial. And up until the defense experts, as we said, the cross-examination, I thought that emotion would win.
Yeah.
One thing, and I have to say, what I do believe was the biggest mistake was prosecution's closing. It is the worst closing argument I have ever heard in any trial I have covered in almost 3 years on YouTube covering trials. It is by far the worst closing argument.
You know what's funny is I was listening to it and I felt like it was a Trump speech. I love Trump. He's awesome. But sometimes after his speeches, you're like, what did he just say? I have no idea what he just said. It was like that. He couldn't finish a sentence. He couldn't finish a thought. He get halfway through a sentence and then change into another thought he had. It was one of the worst. And in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I was thinking about this last night. I wanted to do a compare and contrast between a good opening and a bad opening, and a good closing and a bad closing. And I'm going to use the defense's opening on this case with the Karen Reed defense opening from trial 2. And then I'm going to use the state's closing in this case with another close. I got to find a really good closing. A really good closing is from the
YSL trial, Doug Weinstein's closing. That is really good.
All right, I'll check that out because I want to do a stream where I'm basically it's an educational stream, right? We want to talk about what is an opening statement, what its purpose is, and how one could be really good and really bad, and then what a closing statement or a closing argument is, what its purposes is, and how one could be really good and really bad. So I want to do a stream. So I'll check out that YSL if you want to. If you could toss me a link to that, because I don't know where that would be in the whole stack of YSL cases. So that would be good, and then we can do the because I want to do that because the opening from the defense was horrible, the closing for the state was horrible in this case, and I want to show like what it could be. And the Karen Reed defense opening was really good, and so I want to use that as to compare and contrast. And then,
I mean, this entire trial has been. It was a race to the bottom. Who can do the worst? Hey, look at my good witness. Look how bad I am on direct. Oh yes, said the prosecution. What's my cross-examination? I mean,
it reminds me of that South Park episode where the boys don't want to win the baseball game because then they'll go on to finals. And so they're all trying to lose. Like every team is trying to lose. And so, that's what it reminds me of.
Yesterday there is a case now in Judge McBurney. Judge Simpson. Judge Simpson. A couple of days ago. It's a defense attorney who has been practicing since 2011, and both Judge Simpson and the prosecutor had to teach him what hearsay was, because he asked of a witness, "What did she tell you?"
That's
objection, hearsay. But how else am I going to get this information in? You have to ask her.
I mean, but so hearsay, first of all, in this guy's defense, and I don't know anything about him. Hearsay is a really complicated thing. I've had front of the court referees and judges get it wrong when the other side's trying to admit something and I object because it's hearsay. Like somebody trying to admit their own text messages as proof of the matter asserted, like that's hearsay. They can't. They could testify to it and they can testify as to what my client said in response, but they can't introduce their own text messages to prove that they said these things, right? That's hearsay, and nobody understands that. So it might have been one of those things. But I don't know. But so people are so bad at it.
Yeah, but I think I'm going to follow that case because it's a shaken baby syndrome case where the guy is on a trial for murder.
Oh.
And that would be so it was it was just a preliminary blah 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 for an hour and a half. So I have it on my channel, that hour and a half. But then it was referred to a new judge for trial start in July, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So in Michigan, the preliminary examination would be handled by district court judge. And then once they're bound over, it would go to the circuit court judge. So interesting. The I don't I don't know. I was hoping to see if there was a press conference, see if there's anything else going on, and I'm trying to set up a redirect.
But I have to get back to work because I've been
no worries.
As of now, I am in a phone conference, just so you know.
All right. When you get back, I'm going to see if there is a press conference. So we'll stay live for a little bit longer and see if there's a press conference. I should be able to set up a redirect for your channel too, so I'll do that now.
And, I'm on my phone and I don't know how to get out of here without ending the stream. So just
let me kick you out.
Get me out of here.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Whoop. There we go. I think that works. Well, he's gone anyways. So, hello, everybody. Hello. So that was Nick. I'm going to
that, what was the point of all of this?
let's see if there's
It's been,
what was the point of all of this? It's a trial, woman.
Deliberation, and no
Let's set up a
decision to
redirect
come
for
out
Nick.
of that. Yeah, I was sitting there in the third row of the courtroom. I was sitting behind Patrick Lyoya's family.
What is the point of all of this? Really,
they
that's
didn't
her
say
statement.
anything. It was just complete silence. There was some Schurr's family, Schurr's loved ones were praying right before the judge spoke.
Where
and,
is
this is a reaction, a decision that nobody is really happy about in there. It was very obvious. Complete silence, no reaction. Honestly,
hey Cindy, were you down there protesting?
Having the jury in deadlock, 10 hours ago, people thought that they could come to a decision after this, but we've
well,
sat
I
with the
appreciate
jury
you being
now
here, Cindy.
20
Sorry, I
hours
just
of
read your text now.
deliberation, and they got nothing out of it. Now, honestly, the case just goes back to Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker.
Yes,
and
that's
it's
what
up to
happens.
him whether this case is going to be retried, whether we go through this.
I feel like the prosecutor has a way out, right? The prosecutor has a way to save face with both his officers and the public at large, right? That want to see this officer charged. Be like, hey, I gave it everything I got. I don't feel like I can overcome the mistrial, and so I'm not going to reissue charges. And they could go to the officers and say, hey, I had to bring the charges. It was a mistrial. I'm not going to rebring the charges again. And probably save face with both.
Result. I mean, as somebody who's been in the courtroom every single day with those supporters on either side, is this a shock to you, or is this kind of something that?
No, he's been out on bond. Schur's been out on bond the entire time, which is good. He's not sitting in jail. And it looks like they didn't amend bond.
Absolutely, that's such a
so
great question.
He's still out.
I think it's not so much a surprise since we heard that the jury was in deadlock. 2 days ago, we heard that, and we considered this as a possibility.
I'm happy that the defense didn't, or that the jury didn't bite onto the added manslaughter charge as a compromise verdict.
Really contentious.
That's very good. The fact that the jury took 22 hours approximately to do their job and to say we're deadlocked, I'm encouraged by all of that. That means the system is working. That means that the jurors are actually listening to this case. I don't care if it's just one of them that was a holdout or half of them that was a holdout. Be really curious to learn that if possible. But all too often you see just juries sitting there saying, well, we're gonna vote guilty on something, and I'm really happy that they didn't. So that's good. This is good for the defense.
It's obvious that the jury,
defense attorney was very. Apparently, she has 7 years of experience, which isn't a ton of experience, depending on how often you do trials. Like the average attorney will probably do trials once or twice a year. I try to do more than that, but it depends on the case and the client and everything. So if she's had 6 or 7 trials under her belt, that's not a lot to really gain a lot of experience.
Some supporters of justice for Patrick Lyoya were in the courtroom. They had a little bit of an outburst at the end. One supporter.
They had an outburst. I didn't hear any outbursts. What is this outburst? There is no outburst.
And they were
all right, so let's go.
And so what I'm going to do is declare a mistrial in this case, and that means that you're all discharged. And so I'm going to send you back to the jury room just to await further instructions regarding transportation and that sort of thing. Also, I will come back and speak with you to answer any questions I can answer, and then potentially the attorneys may want to speak with you as well, but that would be up to you. And I'll be back in a few minutes. So we'll have you leave out of the same door. Thank you, and thank you for your time.
I'm not hearing any outbursts. I'm like, it's silent in there. It's so quiet. Where's the outburst? This is a news reporter. There was an outburst in the courtroom.
All right. I'm not sure there's anything else we need to address at this point.
I think we are.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Court is adjourned.
All right, please.
So he's free to go right now. They didn't even address bond. So right now he has no pending charges. He's not under any bond conditions. Hey, Susan.
Breaking news update here in Grand Rapids. The judge has declared a mistrial in the trial of Christopher Schurr. This coming after the jury once again not being able to come.
There was no outburst. What is this? Maybe coming outside of the courtroom? What is this outburst that this journalist, credible journalist, is talking about? Did anybody hear an outburst? I heard silence.
To a unanimous vote on what happened. You can see people now leaving the courtroom. This is breaking news. We just found this out. Very shocking to see that the jury was not able to come to an agreement on what a possible conviction could have been here.
Yeah, before the jury announced exactly kind of what was going on here, there were a couple motions before the jury entered into the courtroom. Again, the defense team standing.
Yeah, so the defense made a motion that the jury be polled and that they were unanimous on one of the counts. There's 2 counts. It's second-degree murder and manslaughter. That if they're unanimous on not guilty for one of the counts, that the state be precluded from bringing those charges again. Double jeopardy would attach. The judge, I believe she actually correctly cited the court rule and said that it doesn't apply because they're lesser included of each other. So she denied that motion, but I'm not hearing an outburst. It was a silent outburst. Yeah, that's what it was. What is she talking about? This outburst, silent outburst.
5 minutes. This case of weeks and years, honestly, in preparation is just over just like that. Christopher Schurr's family left.
From what I understand,
a few minutes after that.
The defense. So the defense, they had 3 years to plan for this, and the defense attorneys were reaching out to taser experts a month ago. It's like, you had 3 years. This was a bad defense.
I believe they're gone from the courthouse completely. Everybody left pretty immediately after that.
Yeah, and again, I think you put it best, kind of an underwhelming end to the case after all of that testimony we heard, all of the exhibits admitted into
This wasn't that long of a trial, sir. This wasn't that long of a trial. Go check out the Karen Reed trial. They've got like 16 more weeks. This is a Cooley professor, by the way. That's my law school, this one talking right now.
So I suspect that both sides are going to reflect on what happened in this trial, what evidentiary hurdles they encountered and overcame. And that's the same for Mr. Becker. He's going to have to take a long.
I anticipate a huge pretrial motion if he's charged again regarding keeping that Dr. S expert in blah, blah, blah off the stand. That's going to go to the Court of Appeals, I think, before the next trial, if there is a next trial, because he was horrible. He had nothing to contribute. He was just spouting off on stuff, in my opinion, confusing the jury, because he was talking about all kinds of things, 1, that aren't in practice, 2, are theoretical, 3, don't apply to this case because they're only policies, not law, and 4, you can't even establish that the Grand Rapids Police Department implements these generally accepted police procedures, right? So he, on the stand, said an officer should not chase a suspect if the suspect runs past the front bumper of their own car. That's what he wants to be generally accepted police practices. And because the officer Schurr ran past that vehicle, that he was violating police procedure. Could you imagine that? All someone has to do to get away from a cop is run past the front bumper of their own car, and they're free to go. That's what this guy testified to. That's the expert that the state called. It was insanity. It was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I go back and forth, right? In my own head, I've gone back and forth on this case. So I don't fault the jury for being at a deadlock. Because right now, like I said, at the beginning of the trial, he was guilty in my mind. And now I don't think they proved that it wasn't self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. So this is if there was any case that I've covered in the last 2 years that I would have expected a mistrial because the jury is deadlocked, it would be this case. So I'm okay with that. I feel like it was predictable.
Asking them what their thoughts were, and I think that's going to play.
I was just trying to see if there was going to be a press conference. It doesn't sound like it.
I wouldn't expect them to make a decision immediately.
As we have you two live on the air,
with the jury makeup and location, not guilty was never on the table. With the jury makeup, I would agree. With the location, I would disagree, because although Grand Rapids is fairly liberal, the city itself, Kent County, which is where Grand Rapids is not overall. Now, maybe by numbers, right? Because there's more people that live in the city as opposed to live in the suburbs. But the suburbs is also part of the jury pool, and they're very conservative there. You know, it's a church on every corner kind of town. So I don't think from the location it's an automatic guilty. Maybe with the demographics, because we looked at the demographics before, and they're not they're odd. And again, I wasn't there for the I wasn't there for the jury voir dire, so I don't know how they responded to certain things. But the makeup with mostly white women in their 20s and early 30s is not the best demographic for this particular case. All right, well, that's all I have for now. I'm going to end the stream. I'm going to send you guys over to the Karen retrial. One of you is going over to Valhalla Awaits, and one of you is going over to the Broken Baker. If you wouldn't please say, hey, MLS raid, Nick raid, that sort of thing, that would be great. There is no time limit to charge. If there was, there is sort of with a bond condition. I think they have 21 days to reissue charges or else the bond drops off. That wasn't really addressed in the court. But for unaliving somebody for second-degree murder, I don't think there's a statute of limitations. So they could, in theory, charge at any point. They could charge 20 years from now. Might be mistaken on the first degree. There's definitely not a statute of limitations. But with regard to the bond, if he's still on bond, can't leave the state without permission, things like that. You got to post money. All of that will drop off 21 days from now if they don't reissue new charges. So that's really the only timeline that they have. But he's been free on his own recognizance, from what I understand. He hasn't been incarcerated. So the prosecutor could take all the time in the world. And with that, I will leave you all. Thanks, Nick, for popping on. Thanks, everybody, for being here. And I'll see you on the next trial.